Hey guys, and welcome to episode number 5 of the Danny Batten MMA Show, only on ACEcast Nation. I'm your host, Cy, and we have new podcasts 3 times a week at least. This week particularly, I think we've got 4 coming, maybe 5 coming, so we've nearly got one every day of the week this week. It's very busy. We've got our weekly Andy Campbell show Monday, which is actually going live on YouTube at 7 p.m. Then we've got Tuesday, Tuesday we've got a Royal Rumble show. Wednesday we've got this. Thursday we've got an Andy Campbell show extra where we're discussing the book The Killing of Emiliano Sala with ex-Premier League footballer Andy Campbell. And so lots of shows coming up. And we've also got an unscripted and uncensored show with Modestus, who is the current Cage Warriors light heavyweight champion, but probably not for much longer, as he recently signed with UFC, as we discussed it in the last show. So send all your questions in for Modestus. We'll be getting that show recorded very soon. Joining me today to talk UFC Rally, Chris Cyborg, Brett Johns, and last night's MMA is former Cage Warriors featherweight champion, Mr. Danny Batten. Welcome, buddy. How are you?
Yes, I'm good, Cy. It's been another good weekend of fights.
It was a good one last night, because it's like sometimes when you have these shows which are not like the big pay-per-views, a lot of the time the fighters who are fighting, they got something to prove, where they may have lost a fight, or they've coming back from an injury or a layoff, and it can make for some really entertaining fights.
Yeah. I think
they're looking to get back on the pay-per-views at the end of the day, aren't they? So
yeah. Styles make fights at the end of the day, and I just think if two people are going to match up really well, it can create an amazing grapple match, amazing wrestling match, amazing strike match. It just depends, really. So sometimes with all the hype that you get on these, really top level matches where you get a lot of hype, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a really good fight. It's just a lot of anticipation that builds up beforehand, isn't there? So, I really enjoy watching the female bouts, which are getting more and more exposure now, and so they should. But they've still been slightly off the main card compared to the men. But I really enjoy watching the women's bouts. I think they're great, really entertaining to watch. They seem to throw a lot more technique regards striking, takedowns, attempts, grapples and scrambles, because they're not so physically strong and they can't be outright as dominant like some guys can be over each other. You get some brilliant matches with the female bouts, and just like the ones that were last night, they were really good to watch. Yeah,
they've got to, like you say, they focus more on technique, because they haven't got the strength to do like what a Michael Chiesa did, where he just dominated with his size as well as his technique. So just before we go into the UFC show, I wanted to touch on Chris Cyborg, who obviously made a Bellator debut last night with a win over Julia Budd, which means that she's got the Grand Slam of women's featherweight titles. She's Strikeforce, UFC, Bellator.
That's right. Yeah.
Everywhere.
Really, really enjoyed this fight. Both big hitters, both very physically strong. It just seemed, a theme that was becoming established was that Cyborg was just a little bit more explosive. I think she gave away a little bit of size, maybe even to Bud, but the theme did seem to be she just seemed to have more energy about her. It really was quite impressive, but really enjoyed it. We saw that Alan with some really, sorry, Alan. We saw, Bud trying to use some nice footwork, but she just kept getting closed up, didn't she? And Cyborg was going for the clinch quite a lot, which was really quite surprising me. I thought she would want her to stay and bang, but she seemed to be trying to fight a smarter fight, and she she scored some nice takedowns in that first round. I was quite surprised.
Yeah, but I think she perhaps learned some lessons from her losses to Nunes, just where she, instead of was like kind of standing and banging like she's done for so many years, she she went for a bit more in the clinch. My main problem with the kind of female featherweights, and Chris Cyborg is it does feel sometimes like there's just not many fighters at that weight in the female divisions in any of the companies. And you kind of saw that with the UFC where they kind of created the featherweight division. Cyborg won it.
Yeah.
And then just they had to keep moving women up to that weight to fight her. And obviously, it's the big fight in the women's division with, since Ronda Rousey's left and some of the others. And then eventually, obviously, Nunes came in and beat her twice, and she's gone to Bellator, and she's picked up that winning thread again. But it's just trying to find fighters. I'm sure there's women out there who will take the fight.
Yeah,
but it's trying to find one where she's not, it's not a mismatch, if you like.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a mismatch by any stretch from what I
didn't think it was.
But she was just getting ahead in all scenarios. She was just striking with that little bit more ferocity. She seemed a little bit physically stronger in that clinch, and just seemed more experienced in that whole clinch game. And our ground showed some good skills too. Really entertaining to watch. It was good and a really great finish. It was real ferocious. It really was
brutal, wasn't it?
It was
the one shot in the middle. Like part of me's a little bit disappointed that she left the UFC because I feel like it wasn't like a business decision. It was more of a kind of they fell out and it was a personal thing. But then equally, she fought Nunes twice, and she got beaten fairly comfortably. And then maybe I'm not sure if they were struggling to find people, but you'd think that there would be plenty of women from the what's the next weight down from the featherweight for the women?
They got the bantamweight down.
Bantamweight. So you'd think there'd be a fair share of those bantamweights who would be happy to fight Chris Cyborg. She's about as big a name as you're going to get outside of like Nunes and that. So it'd be interesting to see where Bellator go with her next.
Yeah. It is going to be interesting. It's good to see her still getting up in the mix with fighters. She's always a great fighter to watch. I've always been a big fan of hers. For many years she was always fighting people that were nowhere near as good as her. But she's being pushed now. And it's unfortunate it's coming towards what you would consider her twilight years now. She's not a young chick anymore, but if she carries on performing like she did on Bellator, she could be in it for a good number of years. She really could. She seems to be keeping herself in extremely good shape.
Yeah, it'll be the thing with her fights, they're always entertaining. Whoever she fights, even when she was cleaning people out in a few seconds or minutes, they were still always entertaining to watch. So she's definitely one to keep an eye on. So just before we move over to UFC, did you watch any of the other Bellator fights? Was there anything which caught your eye?
No, I didn't, just really because of the limitation on my time today.
That's it.
I struggled to fit through the ones that I know we got to cover. Hence we started a little bit later today. But I didn't get to, but I will certainly get to have a look at them. Not that helps us now.
No, I was the same. I watched the Chris Cyborg fight, but just didn't have enough hours in the day to catch up on everything.
Too limited. I'm being a taxi driver for my kids.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Know that feeling very well. So over in UFC Raleigh, so I had the novelty last night, Saturday night of I watched the prelims at an actual decent time. So like UK time for us, I watched Brett Johns come on about 10:30, I think, that was nice because I don't really get to see a lot of them live because I just can't. I never make it to 4 or 5 in the morning. But so Brett Johns fought on the prelims. He's hasn't won since 2017, which on paper sounds terrible.
Sounds worse.
But he's been out, and the last 2 fights he fought was Aljamain Sterling and what was the other one? Forgotten now off the top of my head. I think it was Pedro Nunes. Oh, I've forgotten who it was. But Aljamain Sterling, they're top names in that bantamweight division. I think he was keen to get back to that winning thread when we had him on the show. he was, he was quite honest. He said he felt like if he didn't win, that might be it for him in the UFC.
Yeah.
He put a lot of pressure on himself, but you could see, even watching, like I watched a couple of the interviews in the run-up this week, very focused. And I sort of spoke to him via text last weekend, and he was real focused, real good shape. He'd been out in America for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And you could tell by the way he came in, he was pumped up and ready to go. So in the prelims, it was Brett Johns versus Tony Gravely, who was making his UFC debut as well.
Yes.
What did you make of it?
Oh man, it was so good to see such an exciting grapple match. Not just grappling in terms of the ground, but with the wrestle grappling up against that cage. It was one reversal after another. Super exciting. There was both taking each other's back, which we know is like a KO scenario for grapplers. Oh man, it was so exciting. We couldn't take your eye off the screen.
No,
because you was just gonna. You take your eye off the screen with strikers, you'll miss a few strikes. But it's like that with the wrestling exchanges. You would miss some kind of big throw or nice level drop into a back take. It was so exciting. But John's got an early attempt at a submission. I think he really wanted to try and bag this guy away. He tried for a double wrist a guillotine. Now, the unfortunate thing is that you don't have much control over the body, and so he got switched out on that and then got taken down himself, didn't he?
Yeah.
But the back take come up quite early, didn't it? I was thinking, wow, this is just nuts. I thought we was going to perhaps see an early finish, but that didn't happen, did it?
No, Gravely, I thought, for someone who was making his debut as well, he got put under pressure early with the choke attempt, and they sort of exchanged and reversed some holds. And I thought he did quite well just in that first round, just to keep his cool. It was his first UFC fight. It was a big night for him.
Yeah.
And particularly at certain points in that first round, Johns wanted that early finish. Yeah. And if Gravely had panicked, or let the blood rush to his head a little bit, and just taking his eye off the ball, he could have been finished. And I thought he did well just to slow it down a bit. But I say slow it down. It never really slowed down. They just exchanged takedowns and
I would have been interested to know who had the most tired legs at the end of that first round. Gravely was obviously having to try and support him as a backpack throughout a majority of the round, but by the same token, Brett was having to squeeze those legs all the time to hold the positions. I don't know who was suffering more in that scenario, but it obviously didn't affect either of their legs because they went straight at it in the following round. It was just great. It's one of those fights that I'm going to go back and have a second or maybe even a third look, maybe to learn some combinations myself. But Brett really impressed me with the throw that he did. It was a lovely stepped right across that thigh and really launched him. And I was really impressed. The defining difference, I think, particularly with that first round, and maybe as a theme throughout the whole fight, was that Tony Gravely was doing some great wrestling takedowns, but he wasn't controlling the position very well. I just felt that whenever Brett was succeeding with some takedowns, he had a little bit more control and was making more of it. And I think that became the defining difference between the two.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it was almost a bit like Gravely would take him down, or he would reverse it and get Brett down, and he wasn't progressing then from there.
That's right, yeah.
And obviously, Brett has accomplished, with jiu-jitsu and grappling, so he was able to kind of wriggle out, there was a couple of points, particularly in I think it was the second round, where I started to get a little bit worried. Not for long, just at certain points, I was like, oh,
yeah.
Gravely looked like he had him in a good position.
Yeah, he did. He had Johns' back, didn't he? And it looked a bit sticky for him.
But again, I thought Brett, he similar to Gravely in the first round, where I said that Gravely could have panicked, or he could have, in that kind of heat of the moment thing, made a mistake.
Yeah,
I feel like Brett could have done that because he'd put so much pressure on himself, where he gave up his back. If he had made a mistake, you know, Gravely could have progressed and finished it from there. But I mean,
I think didn't Gravely. I think he fell off his back, didn't he?
Yeah, he wriggled. I think he wriggled underneath.
Yeah,
didn't
he fell out, and then what was good as he scrambled back to his feet, Brett Johnson dropped levels on him really nicely. It was a real nice exchange, very very sharp thinking wrestling exchanges. Impressed me.
Yeah, my father-in-law, he's a very casual MMA fan.
Yeah.
But I'm getting him more and more into it. So I obviously, because it was a Welsh boy fighting, I said to him, "Oh, Brett's been on the show. You know, he's fighting at half 10. Have a give it a watch." And he really, really enjoyed it. Which a lot of casual fans, they don't enjoy the grappling type matches. They much prefer, you know, they prefer the strikes and the exciting. And I think that shows how exciting this match was. I felt like Brett not easily, but I felt like it. A 10-9 for the first round for Brett.
Yes, I agree.
And I think Gravely may have pinched the second round, maybe.
Yeah,
but I think it was close.
That he did. Yeah, it was very close, much closer. But you could say that going into that third round, I'd imagine from both corners they're saying it would be 1-1. You both got to go out and take this third round.
I thought Brett was very, very impressed. That third round I thought was really impressive. I thought he showed his condition was fantastic.
Yeah. It was. Again, a little bit lack of control with Gravely's takedowns. He took him down with like a head restraint type hold, but it gave him no control of the body whatsoever. So he was losing out to a lot of scramble escapes. And of course, Brett was just countering straight away. He was giving him no time to think. He was straight back, doing a takedown of his own. Got on his back, didn't he, again? And but this time, I think it began to wear on Tony, and also Brett had some experience of being on his back and changed it up a little bit. He's really trying to sprawl him out, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's trying to flatten him out.
Yeah, he really trying to flatten him out. I think it was an absolute good call, but he had a partial body triangle. The problem with a body triangle is you can't really sprawl out both legs. Excuse me. Yeah, it's not very nice on your diaphragm because it really squeezes the life out of you. But it just stops that impressive ground and pound. I think if you had two hooks and sprawled him out, he would have been able to hip right in and get more height and leverage on those shots to maybe cause a referee stoppage a little quicker possibly. But he still got the job done. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it was still great.
But as soon as he had once he got that body triangle on, I thought Michael Bisping, who I really enjoyed actually all show, he called it perfectly at the right time. He said, as he was, he had the body triangle and he was striking him. And he said, the problem with this is once you start, you have to defend the strikes and you're worrying about the strikes, is you leave that gap for him to go for the choke. And literally, as he said it, he was striking him. He lifted his arms to cover up, which he had to do, because if he hadn't covered up, the ref would have stopped it for the strikes.
Yeah.
And
agreed. He was on point with his commentary last night. I enjoyed listening to him. You could clearly see he's become a real, true, educated fighter and commentator. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly right. He was throwing shots. He was having to think about submissions as well as strikes, and eventually it got overwhelming for him. Fatigue steps in as well. That becomes a factor. So he had pressure. It's his first fight in UFC, and he's trying to defend chokes. It becomes system overload a little bit for him in that third round. But I'm just so happy for Brett. Hopefully it's going to be the start of a turnaround of those, unfortunate 2 losses that he had, which I think people are making a big hoo-ha about. That was against very, very good guys. His career before that was incredible. He's had those 2 blips and he's back to winning ways. And I think you're going to see more of that in coming fights for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I what people forget is obviously they look at it on paper. He lost 2 fights. He lost 2 fights to 2 of the top guys in the division, but also he didn't get cleaned out, or he didn't disgrace himself. He wasn't beaten terribly. He did quite well in those fights. He just lost, which is fighting, that can happen against anyone. And I thought I was particularly impressed with Brett last night, and I do wonder whether that's because he's been on the show and I speak to him, and so I was very much wanted him to win. but I did think he was very impressive. His conditioning really impressed me. He didn't look.
Oh yeah, I can tell
as
you
if he
now,
was struggling.
Wrestling is one of the most exhausting ranges, and then you add strikes into the fact that you're wrestling and submissions. Trust me, that was all up against the fence. That was grueling in a very different way to what perhaps we'd normally see in terms of UFC. But yeah, his condition was good. His fight IQ was on point. I was totally impressed. There wasn't really anything negative to say. It was great. I can't wait to see more of him. I really can't.
No, and I think he's capable of, pushing up those rankings. And like it was interesting what you said. Like the first round, he really pushed for that finish in the first round. And you mentioned fight IQ. The second round, Gravely, got himself together a bit, and he came into it with some reversals and combinations. And again, then Brett had to adjust what he was doing, and then came back in the third round and got the finish. But
Brett wasn't making any major errors.
No.
Everything that was being successful, Tony, was really pushed to be earned. They were both really on point. They really was. But I think the defining difference was the fact that Brett was getting more control during his takedowns and back takes, and Tony just was not controlling situations so well. It was perhaps not so dangerous with his submissions. But yeah, great, good fight.
Indeed, I thought. I think Gravely, he showed enough that I'll certainly keep an eye on him. I was quite impressed with his performance, his temperament as well.
Sure,
kind of caught my eye. I'd be interested to see how he does in his next fight.
Yeah, I mean, we got to saw one part of it, and that was all grappling and wrestling. We never really truly got to see any striking format. So that will all come to light in future bouts. But yeah, I think he's going to do well in UFC.
Okay, so obviously normally we just focus on the main cards, but we we wanted to support the Brit, as we like to do, and so we'll move on to the main card, which he says is he's trying to scroll through desperately to get to the first fight. Did you watch any of the other prelims, or did you just watch as I scroll through?
I didn't. No, I just the main card.
Just stuck to what we. Same as me.
Because I had to watch that Brett one, which was obviously on the prelims, and then obviously watched that Chris Cyborg one as well, and then it just left me with no other time really.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? I mean, at least now we got some London shows and an Ireland show with Bellator, and so we'll be able to watch them at a decent time.
Yes.
And Bellator, I'm sure you'll have a very good seat for Tom Mearns' fight. When's that? That's March, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's in March. Don't quote me on the exact date.
I know. I think it's the 20 something because I know it's around my son's
maybe, but I don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah, I say this because I'm trying to load up the page.
It's just we got lots of fights going on in March, and so it gets confusing for me. So as it approaches, I start getting it in, writing it in pen rather than pencil in my diary.
Is he Tom all set and ready, raring to go? I'd imagine, is he?
Yeah. He's well in fight camp mode. He just wants to redeem himself. I don't want him to get too tunnel vision with just that in his mind.
Yeah, of course.
I want to concentrate on the opponent to hand. The kid he's fighting is obviously very good and very capable. But we're going to try and put any wrongs right, and we're going to try and make all the things he was doing right that little bit better, and push for that win.
Yeah. Well, what I will say, Danny, is every fighter which I've had on, boxer and MMA fighter, their fight following their show, they've gone on to win. So hopefully Tom keeps up the 100% record. Yeah. And we'll just use that as a selling point then to all fighters that it's not because you're talented or anything like that. Just come on the podcast and you'll win your fights. Absolutely.
We should do little lucky charms.
That's it. Absolutely. But boxer Gavin Gwynn, who we had on before, he won his fight straight after. And obviously I'm not in any way implying that we had anything to do with that, but it's a nice coincidence. And it's a nice thing to have.
Absolutely.
A lucky charm, as it were.
Yeah.
So I've finally found my page. So the first fight of the main card, another great fight, I got to say, I really enjoyed it, was Jamal Hill versus Darko Stosic.
Oh, right, yes. Yes. I'm just going to get onto my notes for
Yeah,
that one.
no, that's
Yeah,
good.
I really enjoyed that. That was a good one. Right.
Yeah, I gotta say, these kind of smaller cards, particularly like with the UFC ones, they can be real sleeper shows because you might not be going in expecting much. You know, with this, I would have watched it, but I might have watched it, you know, tomorrow or Tuesday. But I wanted to cover it because of Brett, and yeah, it was just fantastic.
Yeah,
Real good show.
Yeah, he'll come out. He come out as a southpaw, really tall, really rangy, and super sharp and accurate. You know, Darko, I think he could have been put out if he had any less defense than he had. He was fighting really tight with his hands, but every shot Hill threw at him had meat behind it, had snap behind it. It was really impressive to think that was his first fight, I believe, isn't it? In
Yeah, I
UFC.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that made it even more impressive for me. The fact that he seemed so composed, so sharp, so with it. You know, on a downside of thing, whether it's the occasion, whether it's just his style, chin was a little bit high, and I did worry that Darko would find it with a left hook, and he did swing for it a few times. But I just think that sharpness, that extra range, just made it never quite there enough for him, was it? Yeah, but he was going for the body, he was going for the legs, he was really burying those punches in, and I think Darko was left a little bit bewildered in the first round on what to do. I think he was hoping the pace was going to taper off and he could reset for the second round, but the theme stayed the same. He's got really good conditioning, Jermaine Hill. The fact that he's a southpaw too. I would have liked to have seen Darko try to be a little bit more diverse with his strikes. He was always trying to lump in with those hands, and maybe try to do a few leg kicks to at least stop Hill coming in so willy-nilly to throwing at the legs, throwing at the body, throwing at the head. I would have liked to have seen some more leg kicking from Darko, but definitely more attempts for the takedowns, because we did see some success with the takedowns, but always too late in the round. It was like with a minute to spare, and I think he cottoned onto a theme a little bit too late in the whole process of the fight, that there was a hole in his takedown defense. But yeah, a really good fight. That first round was super impressive. I was really curious to see what was going to happen in the second.
I felt similar to you. The first round started as Hill sort of come out, and straight away he hit a couple of leg kicks and jabs, which, like you say, they've really had some snap behind him. But then Darko, as he came forward, he seemed to go for that left hook, straight away. And then after that, I felt like he was almost looking for that big left hook too much. And like you said, he didn't vary up his striking because of that.
Yeah.
But they pulled it up on commentary that Hill was leaving his, I think it was his right hand quite low, which was leaving, almost encouraging Darko to go for that left hook. And it was interesting because as impressive as Hill looked, he really did look impressive. You did feel like Stosic had a chance, and there was points where you thought, oh, and just some of the strikes. There was some big knees to the midsection.
Oh, he was doing everything. He was kicking the legs. He was doing head kicks. He was teeping to the body. He was going in with body uppercuts, attacking the head with those piercing straight 1-2s. He was literally, wrecking him from top to bottom. It was a real demonstration of sharp striking. Not perfect in terms of his defense, with the high chin, low hands.
Yep.
I think what made that hand look ridiculously low was the fact that his chin was ridiculously high. I think the combination of both made his guard look so detached from his head, but it wasn't an issue for him. But it could be in future bouts. So let's hope that he puts that right, because as he moves up the levels, there'll be people watching that and trying to strategize to get access to that chin. But if he's got a good camp behind him, I'm sure they'll be putting that to rights very, very soon. He's going to be hard to beat, this kid, in the future. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, when you look at it, first fight, so there's going to be some, various little technical issues which they're going to have to iron out. But on the whole, I thought he was real impressive. And like you talked about fight IQ in the Brett Johns fight, maybe Stosic didn't show enough fight IQ during the fight to try and implement some strategies to get into some of those weaknesses which we've pointed out, like the low hands, the chin, and even like you said, going for the takedown. He seemed too cotton on to that.
Yeah,
a bit late.
Yeah, it looked like he was being used as a punch and kick bag at one point, because there was not enough threatening elements coming back for Hill to worry. He just was getting more and more confident, so he started to relax. That means you're doing everything to full efficiency. But Darko was having successes, in terms of that takedown. But it was just coming all too late. He should have really been pushing that a lot earlier on. I think in that first round, when he knew he was getting lit up with a few of those shots, I think he should have been not just hunting for that left hook, maybe throwing that left hook into shoots. But they didn't come till later in the round, and it really didn't take effect until the latter part of the actual fight, where he's actually taken down with any time to work. But I think if that had happened from the first round, maybe we would have seen a different result, maybe a different fight completely, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was fascinating to watch, because so I scored this fight just it's like I do for fun at 29-27, and I think that was what the judges, they all had it 29-27. However, a website which I follow and I respect greatly, we've worked with them, with some of their journalists, and spoken to them, is Fightful, and they actually had it at 29-28. And they gave the first round to Stosic, which I found really fascinating, because, like you say, he got, he took a lot of strikes, but they gave it 10-9 to Stosic, and I think, obviously, there were some high kicks and there were some kicks to the midsection, and but
I think maybe
combinations as well.
Maybe because he was having to, footwork away. Darko looked like he was always stalking a prey, didn't he? So maybe they scored it for that, but I wouldn't have scored it 28-27. No, I would have gone with how you scored it, to be fair.
Jamal Hill, impressive, good debut. Stuff to work on, and like you say, that kind of next level up of fighter will have been looking at that and will be thinking to themselves, well, if he comes in like that against me, I fancy my chances.
But there's things to aim for, but will those doors be shut by the time you get your chance to have a shot at him?
That's down to people like yourself, isn't it? Like coaches to pick up on those things and work on them. So you think he needs to tuck his chin in a bit, get his hands maybe a bit higher?
When he goes up against someone who's a little taller and rangier, Darko's not like a super smooth footwork merchant. He plods forward, he stalks you down. I think if he faces someone with a little bit of height, a little bit more reach, who's an accomplished striker, who's got a little bit more smoother footwork, that chin could be getting found. If your chin gets found, you're going to have to start leaning back out the way of shots so it don't get found. If you're leaning back, you give your hips and your legs for the takedown, even more so. So he definitely needs to put that right. There's no two ways about that. But with the look of his athleticism, the cardio was incredible. I mean, he threw a lot of shots, and it slowed a little bit in the third round. But I think, everything he threw had proper power behind it, proper snap. You couldn't allow the guy to be breathing a little heavy in the last round, but still kept working really well. I can't wait to see him again.
Yeah, me too. The velocity and the sheer amount of strikes that he was throwing was impressive to me. Like the power, like there wasn't many strikes in there which weren't, they weren't many like half-hearted strikes. Like those kind of strikes which are just there to score but not really do any damage. There wasn't very many of them. A lot.
He didn't have to footwork. He didn't have to feint his way in or anything like that. He had so much range and height on Darko. So everything he threw, he knew it was going to be landing in some form, whether it was on his blocking forearms, because Darko did have a very tight defense. Because they were dribbling through. I think for the fact that Darko had such good form was what allowed him to survive. Yeah, there's not really much else I can
No.
say about that other than
Impressive.
he's one to look out for. Absolutely.
Yep. So next up was you mentioned at the start of the show that you really enjoyed the female fights.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
We had Hannah Cephas or Cyphers. I'm really bad with names, so I apologize as always to these fighters. I butcher their names. Hannah Cyphers versus Angela Hill. Another very enjoyable fight.
Yes, I did enjoy this one. What is it I put down for this one? Okay, yeah. So there was a quite a bit of a size difference here. I don't know whether you felt the same, but
yeah, it was significant. I thought.
Yeah, it was a significant size difference in height and reach, and I was really impressed with Hill. She had really good jab, unnecessarily trading in that pocket a little bit too long as a strategy.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily allowing Cephas to trade back. But Cephas was impressing me too, because if she's going to give away power and size like she was, and she had those opportunities to be in a pocket, it's trying to be more diverse. And she was trying to put in those kicks, but she just didn't look like she had enough on it to ever trouble Hill. And you just always wondered, is it just going to be a matter of time before Hill starts taking effect with her size? So they got to the end of the first round, didn't they? And it wasn't until they come out in the second one that really started to tell tale. I was really kind of curious to see how the corner was going to try and change up their games to try to make one dominate over the other. But Hill come out, didn't she, with a really lovely foot trip. Really, really impressive. And when it went to the ground, that's when the size really started to show. I think even if there was a difference in grappling level regards to the smaller one over the bigger one, it didn't look like it was gonna matter. She just looked tiny underneath her. She started out in half guard, I believe, wasn't it? And got some successes putting pressure, and then started getting into that mounting position. And from that mounting position, it was brutality. Did you see those elbows going in? I was like, oh, I don't think she opened her up though. I don't know how, because some of them crunched
there
right
was
home.
one which caught right on.
Oh, yeah. So the whole theme of the fight was, as they were both trading in the pocket, I felt like Hill could have done better just sticking on the end of her jab and just grinding and making an easier night for herself and picking her apart as the fight progressed. But I think maybe these women just seem so eager, don't they? This is why I love watching them, because they just give it their all. They throw everything at each other. So for entertainment's factor, it made for a good fight for me to watch. But I just felt like she could have made that size matter to her consequentially for against Sivers, if she just footworked away, stuck behind her jab a little bit, then went in with her cross hand towards the latter parts of rounds. Once she had perhaps got her on the end of her shots a little bit more, but she was throwing the 1-2s, 1-2-3s, and allowing Sivers to strike back, and always allowed Sivers to look like she was still in the fight in that first round.
Yeah, the first round particularly, Sivers actually hit a couple of nice combinations. She cracked it with a really nice body kick and followed it up with a combination. Which, so like you say, in that first round, you felt like even though the size difference and the sort of strength difference was there, Sivers was in with a chance.
Yes.
But the second round, like that trip was just so technically,
it was technically
beautiful,
good.
Aesthetic on the eye, isn't it? It was just one of those nice ones.
Yeah,
and that was pretty much it after the trip, wasn't it?
Sivers couldn't recover from it. I think she should have been getting to the side of her body, bridging more, fighting to get out of that position, showing a little bit more urgency. She kind of was accepting that position. You just cannot accept a position when you're being ground and pounded on. The refs are really quick to step in. You have to be showing some kind of exchange of position, or at least tempting to. But we wasn't seeing that from her. Maybe a couple of those elbows crunched home. She thought better of it to try to get access to the hips with her hands and leaving her head open. And I probably would have done the same, having elbows like that coming down at me. That was quite a scary ground and pound. Everyone that landed, I was, muttering a little ooh and ah as they went home.
Yeah,
good to watch, man.
A couple of the latter elbows, it was like, okay, ref, time to step in. There was a couple of brutal ones.
I was waiting to see blood, but not.
Yeah, it was weird, wasn't it? you expected it to be opened up by the end, by the time some of them had landed.
Yeah, maybe it was a forearm a little bit that she was catching rather than tip of the elbow.
So I don't know about you, whether you think this, but I think one of the reasons, like we mentioned earlier with the women's fight, I think technically they have to be a bit sharper because they haven't got the size always to dominate. Obviously, Hill did in this. But I think also another reason why the women's fights are often very entertaining is because these women, if they can pull together three wins or 4 wins in a row, which are impressive strikes or submissions or finishes, the women's divisions are not as crowded as the men's. So, like, for instance, if you look at, like, say, featherweight at men's in the UFC and featherweight in Cage Warriors and these places, it is rammed packed with real top talent. Even in, Cage Warriors, let alone when you've got the UFC as well. Whereas the women's division, I think, is a lot more open in all weights. There's top fighters there, and but if you can get that run of wins, particularly if you get a few finishes, you can be right up there, towards the top of the rankings and getting title shots and things like that. And I think that helps to motivate these fighters to finish fights.
In terms of having successful fights, you need to get to the top in the women's division. Is obviously going to be less than the men's right now, but I'm sure that's going to change in coming years. So does it make for a more exciting fights? Possibly so. The chance for them to get to really life-changing fights is closer. Maybe. So I don't know. I just think whenever I've seen girls fight, even before it was in UFC, we used to see it around on the European circuits. They were always just so tenacious and just throw down so many more techniques within each individual round. It's just great to watch.
Certainly is. I was going to ask you, so obviously you've got BST. Have you noticed over maybe, recently, shall we say, that is there more girls sort of training in grappling and jiu-jitsu and things like this?
Definitely. More than there ever was. I'd say, just taking my gym as an example, we definitely have more women wanting to be fighters than we've ever had. We have got a couple of real burning little talents. One of them being Hayley Valentine, tiny little thing, 50 kilos. I think she fights in the 48 division. She's fighting for an amateur world title in March. So it'd be interesting to see how she gets on with that. And then we got crikey, trying to remember names. Terrible, aren't I? Crikey, can't remember my own students' names. Crikey, he'll come to me. But we got another lady that's just incredible. She spars with all the guys, real mucks in, and you can't muck about. You're going to get tagged. In fact, this girl, when the name comes to me, she's put me to sleep in training before. I mean, how embarrassing is that? Maybe that's my man ego not wanting to tap until I had a little nap. Maybe that if I ever become really famous, I'm sure that little video footage will go circulated. It certainly went round our gym.
Well, funny enough, Johnny, who's a regular listener, asked if there was any female fighters from your gym who we should be looking out for over the next couple of years.
Hayley Valentine, and the girl's name is Magdalena. I don't know how to pronounce her second name.
You're nearly as bad as me.
I'll have to find here. I'll have to look it up. I will look it up and I'll give it to you. But unfortunately, certainly full of potential to have a career. She's currently having to nurse a knee injury, finding out how bad that is, and also had a child. So that kind of slowed things down regards what potential she could have had to have shown by now. But a lot of all proves well with her knee, and gets things settled in her life. You can see her back on the fight circuit, perhaps making some waves. We'll just have to see. But we certainly got other women that are progressing, looking to do their amateurs and maybe progress to pro.
Cool. So just a quick question for me, really.
Mm,
As you know, I like to go off on tangents as we're
that's
talking.
okay.
Do you think it's harder for a male or a female fighter to progress kind of from amateur to professional and really make a career of it?
Yeah, I suppose it's got to be harder for a girl because the simple fact that there isn't the huge pool of fighters that there are. If you want to rack up an impressive fight record, it don't take much to do so now, especially on the amateur scene, saturated with so many people who want to build their records and get to pro. So you can build up a fight record, pretty substantial one pretty quickly if you wanted to. So yeah, I'd say for the fact that there's more options to fight, yeah, it's easier for a guy right now. Those times will change. It's all heading the right way for the women, and I'm absolutely all for that. I'm totally down for it. Can't say I'm always a fan of seeing their pretty little faces get smashed up, but that's all part of the fight game, right? Yeah, it's
No,
going to get better.
There's more MMA like companies and brands than ever before in terms of places for people to fight as well. So I think that's only a good thing, providing they're all run safely and within guidelines and all this sort of thing. The more places for fighters to fight, the better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course that's going to make any road to something more than you are at that time easier.
Yeah,
you just need more options, and those options ain't out there as much as it is for the men over the women right now. But those times are changing. They take a little time, just like it took for that sport to evolve to anything substantial over here in the UK. It started off with real humble beginnings, and it took a while to get momentum. A lot of councils were trying to ban it, weren't allowing it. That we had to get through a lot of difficult times for it to get where it's got now. I mean, now we're all good, as long as there's no touch wood fatalities or anything. I mean, that really could put a spanner in the works. We don't want to happen here what happened in France. I think France have just legalized it, or on the verge of. I know there was on the verge of legalizing MMA, but that was banned over there for many, many years. We don't want that situation to happen over here because that won't be good for man or woman.
No, and I think it shouldn't. There's no reason for it. Obviously, with fighting of any kind, boxing or karate or taekwondo, there's risk of injury, and when you're getting struck to the head and things like this, there's risk of everything. When I spoke to Paddy Pimblett, he said like one of the most frustrating things for him as someone who's kind of at the top level of Cage Warriors and looking towards the UFC, it's frustrating that boxers get paid, like a low level boxer could get paid double, triple what a higher placed MMA fighter would get for pay-per-views and things like this. And in many ways MMA fighters have got a lot more to worry about in terms of injuries and potential problems with concussions and things like that, because you're putting in things like kicks and knees and elbows.
I would actually say you're probably going to suffer more brain trauma doing boxing than you will MMA. I think MMA gives you aesthetic damage. Yeah, but I think if you do any kind of study into the effects of boxing, you'll find there's been a whole load more fatalities. I know the sport's been around a lot longer. You can argue these points, but this term punch drunk is really quite prevalent. You hear it in boxers being interviewed long after their careers. They get punchy so often. You don't really get that with MMA fighters, and I don't think you're likely to. It's a different type of impact with that small, tight MMA glove. Yes, it's going to bruise. Yes, it's going to potentially cut you more, but I don't think it does more damage. In fact, I think it does you more damage with a padded boxing glove. I think it ricochets through the brain, it shakes the head a whole lot more. And in their training and in their amateur careers, they're wearing the head protection. Yeah. This is just getting your head shook about a whole lot more too. It's just enlarging the potential target, which is your head. So it protects you from cuts and facial damage, but it is certainly getting your head banged about. I'm not saying that I'm not against boxing. I love watching boxing.
I know what you mean.
I'm certainly not comparing to us, but in any biography way. But for the health and safety aspects, MMA is safer. Yeah, it comes with its risks, but to me, it's safer overall. Really is. But it's a little harder to train in its problematic dealings with some of the aspects of potentiality to lose. So for that part, it should be paid more, and
Yeah,
I think it will in time. It takes time. But yeah, it can make you scratch your head a little bit when you see how much some of these top boxers are getting paid. I mean, it's just tens of millions, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think when Paddy was, referring to that when I was talking to him, I think he was referring more to kind of your kind of lower end, just like maybe a journeyman boxer who's been around, fights as the open, like on the prelims or the kind of opening fights of pay-per-views.
Yes,
they seem to get on the big shows. They'll have their fight, they'll lose or whatever.
Yeah,
they'll get paid a lot, and then you might have someone at the top end of, like a big promotion in the UK or Europe. They might be champion or they might be a top contender.
Yeah,
and they're not getting as much as the lower end boxer. But I mean, that will come with time. I believe.
Yeah, it will come time. There was an interesting debate. I can't remember the boxing name. He's like an old guy who's one of the main promoters. But he had beef with Dana White, and they was exchanging a few years ago. Making digs at each other. How the MMA is coming up, and the boxing promoter, wasn't liking it, and would make certain comments about UFC and MMA as a sport. And but it's so easy to counterattack and attack the boxing community. But by the same token, and the promoter pointed out a really interesting point, that the boxers get so much better looked after in that when a promotion's put on, 80% of their income could end up going to the boxers in terms of their fight purses. 80%, and yet only 20%, maximum 20%, gets to the fighters in the MMA. I mean, that's quite a profound thing, So the real big gainers is UFC, Bellator, and all these promotions are doing very, very well, and the fighters
are
right down on the food chain. Yeah. So that's why boxers get paid so much. Yeah, but that's an interesting point. I didn't realise so much of the percent of money that comes in goes to the fighter. But there you go. That's why they're getting so much money.
Yeah, and I think that being completely serious and wanting something to change is those fighters who are putting their their lives at risk and their body and health and long-term health sometimes at risk. They're the ones who should be getting the money. They should be getting a good, a fair payment. Out of the money which they're making from the the pay-per-views and whatever.
Sure.
I want to see the fighters get the money, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I both. I think that would be good.
So, off the tangent train.
Yes.
And back to the fights. We had number 11 ranked Jordan Espinosa versus number 12 ranked Alex Perez.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, this one didn't last too long, did it?
No, it did not.
It's all happened in the first round. Both come out trading very early, and Perez closed in. But Jordan was showing some good footwork. It was a little bit hard to get hold of at first. But then Perez gets in on him and just does a simple hip suck. He just got deep in on the hips. And because he got in so early, he was obviously feeling physically fresh. And he pulled those hips in. They just dragged him down. Nothing pretty about it. But anyway, you get someone to the back, to their back is all good, right, if you get control. And he took him down. He got control early. And that control come in the form of that half guard. And he really attacked to put that far arm under pressure for an arm triangle choke. But unusually, he started putting pressure with that choke while still having the leg deep in the half guard. You don't normally see that, but this goes as well with the fact that he was obviously feeling fresh and strong. He had his head under the arm. He started putting that shoulder drive in. He had him flat out, and he just put the squeeze. He put the drive with the shoulder in, didn't he?
Yes.
And it looked like perhaps it wasn't be enough to choke him, but it put him out. It was
cold.
I didn't actually see the time. How long? Do you know how
2
long the
minutes
actual?
33 of the round one.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. What can you say about that? Well done, Perez.
Yeah, it was quick. It was impressive. He just dragged him down and choked him out, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Nothing super pretty about any of it. Even the way he did the submission was, rather forceful from a
Yeah,
position where it's normally enough to prevent a submission. If you're in half guard underneath, it's pretty hard. Sorry, I've got half guard on top. It's hard to submit someone from there. It's not straightforward. But he got it in great fashion.
indeed. And like you say, Espinosa, didn't look too bad
No,
before he was dragged down and choked out.
yeah.
But there's
Yeah,
not a
didn't get to
great.
see him work. We really didn't just get to see what he was going to be about in that fight. It was just all over too soon. Made one error, got taken down. Didn't really
Paid for
even
it.
make an error off his back. He was holding the half guard, but yeah, the choke got forced on him. Don't be half guarded in the first few minutes of the first round.
Yeah, and I guess UFC, arguably the top MMA company in the world, is you make a mistake at the top level and you get punished, whether it's whether you'd count it as a big mistake or just a slight mistake, but that's what happened. And this was a big fight for these guys, ranked 11 and 12.
Yeah, they're starting to break through to start touting to be
top 10.
contenders. Yeah.
So I wonder, Alex Perez, especially because it was such an impressive victory in terms of the time it took and stuff. You'd think he'd probably break into that top 10 now.
Yeah, you would think so. So yeah, let's see him step up. Let's see whether he can win so easily against someone in the top 10 now.
Yeah. The next fight, however, as little as there was to talk about in that fight, there was plenty to talk about in this fight, as we had the co-main event of Rafael dos Anjos, or RDA, we'll call him, versus Michael Chiesa. Now, Michael Chiesa is massive for this weight.
Yeah, they're huge. I mean, dos Anjos is not big at that weight. He's not particularly tall. He's not particularly long with his reach either. The size was really, really apparent. The criticism I have of dos Anjos is he always goes backwards up against the fence. If you watch all his fights, if he's going to suffer anywhere, I think the commentators made a good point. He got taken down around about 28 times. That's a lot of times to be taken down. There's obviously some kind of issue there, and I've sort of like openly criticised this fault in his game over the last few years when watching him with my mates and my son. I'm like, look, he goes straight back. He gets put against the fence. He just doesn't do the circling footwork or zigzagging footwork, where you'll do 2 steps to your left, 2 steps to your right. Make use of the fact that octagon is pretty much it's a circle. It's round, effectively. Use it. Circle. Yeah. Don't get put up against the fence so easily. So that was my opening issue with him. And before the fight began, I was thinking, is he going to get put up against the fence again? And indeed he did. He done quite well in some exchanges. He actually got on top a couple of times as well. But that size advantage and stuff like that, he just couldn't do anything telling when he did have the top position.
Yeah. RDA, he felt at times like he was in it, but ultimately I just felt like Chiesa kind of dominated him for the majority of the fight. It kind of began with Chiesa was just using his jab, and then you had RDA did crack him with a nice kind of blow to the right hand side of his body, the sort of midsection. And you thought, oh hello, but then as Chiesa comes forward, RDA's, like you say, he's backing off and he gets hit with a combination. So do you think that could be, like, in your opinion as a former fighter and as a coach, do you think that could be a confidence thing with RDA, where maybe he's been cracked and I don't want to say he's backing away, but he kind of is backing away and he's getting caught up against the cage by not using his feet? Could that be a confidence thing, or
someone's obviously not brought it to light? It's either a lack of awareness from his team or him, or it's a habit he can't break out of, even if he is aware. But he's got to put that right. It's just not a good idea. This is like, putting your back against the fence. You might as well be jumping guard. You're putting yourself into secondary position all the time. I just feel like all these other aspects of his game potentially so good. It's obviously clearly a high level grappler and clearly a high level striker. It's just his wrestling aspects is a little lacking. You don't even need to be a super amazing wrestler to not get taken down. You just have to be aware and use appropriate footwork and your anti-wrestling methods. He doesn't. He seems to lock horns with the wrestler with his back up against the fence, and in that weight division where he's not the biggest, he's getting taken down all too often.
Yeah, especially with someone like Chiesa who's dropped down to the welterweight, isn't it? He's big for this weight. I thought the start of the second round, I thought RDA straight away came out with some leg kicks.
Yeah,
I thought, right, that's a good idea. Try and chop him down a bit, slow him down a bit, maybe make him think twice about coming in for the takedown.
He buckled that knee right across a few times, and Chessia didn't receive him that well. He really buckled across with it. He didn't want no part of that. But I thought it was going to be a start of maybe, okay, he's got a new strategy in mind. Maybe things are going to change up. But the theme went back to old very, very quickly. It did. He did takedowns of his own, which was looking exciting, but couldn't control it for very long there. There was a big knee as well. But,
yes.
I don't remember that big knee. That landed all good. I was thinking, could this be a start of something that he could snowball off of? But nothing really come of it for him. He just looked like he was on the receiving end all the time. It's just, it's not looking great. And then going into that third round, I think we had the exchange on the ground where he was going for that leg lock, and it looked a little promising that there could have been something there. But I think that was the case of he knew he was losing this fight and had to put it away. If you could have put it away with a submission, there's nothing better than a good old heel hook or something like that, but it leaves no questions asked. If you have one of them slapped on you, you can't get out. You want to be tapping. So I think it was a good call for him to go for that kind of sub. But that didn't happen for him either. He just let the round slip away. Yeah, takedowns being the issue.
Yeah, I thought Chiesa managed that third round pretty well. Obviously, like you say, RDA, he knew he needed to get the finish.
Yeah.
Chiesa scored a takedown and he got the half guard, but he rolled for a Kimura and then RDA escaped, which is where he kind of rolled in for the heel hook, and Chiesa defended it by landing some strikes. And just for like a split second, I thought, oh, hello.
Yeah.
He's got this heel hook in. This could be it. Is he going to pull it out the bag? But Chiesa then kind of managed the situation well.
He's probably been in that situation so many times in training. He was cool, calm and collected in there. He did the right sort of things. Wasn't perfect, but he did what he had to do. He got the leg out of harm's way and carried on the theme of domination.
Yeah, we've talked about fight IQ throughout the evening so far, and I think this again, Chiesa, I thought managed this whole fight very well.
There was holes in DeSanchos's whole theme and game, and he found that hole and just kept prodding there, and he just kept taking the rounds off of DeSanchos. I got a little sad for DeSanchos, because he had a little tear, didn't he? He was getting a number of wins behind him and stuff like that. But then I just think with that issue that he's got, unless he puts that right, he won't become a contender again. Not in the current climate of how good those welterweights are. He has to put that right to ever be in contention again, or maybe even go back down to lightweight. I think I'd like to see him back down in lightweights, to be honest, but I don't know whether that's ever going to happen.
He did look small against Chiesa, I thought. But yeah, the problem is when you're finding yourself up against the cage a lot, and against someone like Chiesa who's so good on the ground, but also got that size advantage. You're putting yourself in a position where you're going to find it difficult, no matter how good you are, defending or from off your back or whatever it may be. You're putting yourself in a situation where you're thinking more about surviving rather than
Yeah.
doing something to win the fight, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Listen, if I was Dos Santos' coach and I knew that he wanted to go up to this welterweight division in the first place, I'd be saying, look, you're going to be fighting bigger, heavier dudes, stronger dudes. Let's really get this footwork. I'll be working on his footwork. I'll be like, you're going to be a smaller, lighter, faster guy. Let's use that as a weapon.
Yeah.
But he's not using it as a weapon, and so they're using their size as a weapon on him. If you're going to be fighting someone bigger and stronger, you don't want them getting hold of you, and they're just getting hold of him all too often.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. And Chiesa now, I think he's on 3-3, 1-3 on the bounce. I think it is now.
Yeah. So he'll be stepping up.
And I thought this was a convincing victory as well. Really.
Yeah.
RDA, I felt like he was in it, but never really in it. If that
the only
makes
thing
sense.
I will say, to me, Dos Santos, he lost it because of himself.
Yeah.
And so I'm still left with questions asked. Can Michael really still, can he really make it in that top 5? Can he break through yet? I don't know whether I saw from that. Although he did obviously perform really, really well. He performed really, really well on someone to me was making major errors each round in terms of his location, getting put up against the fence. You can only do what you can do with what's in front of you. But I just felt like that fight was just given to him rather than him coming to take it. And I want to see him win a fight where he has to take it to see what he's got. So I'm still left with questions. I still want to be convinced more that he can make it into that, that real
welterweight,
real tops. Yeah, personally.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. RDA is ranked number 5, but whilst it was a fairly convincing fight, convincing victory for Chiesa, like you say, how much of that was due to RDA's mistakes?
Yeah. It was
even though it was quite a dominant win, if it's like a strange one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, he did use his size and his grappling, and he took him down and he dominated him. And when you say that, you think, that was a really dominant win. But when you factor in the errors that
it was made too easy for him.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Okay, he got leg kicked a few times. Yes, he did take him down, but the leg kicks never amounted much because he got taken down thereafter. And the takedowns that happened to him, he recovered from very, very quickly. So it just didn't look like it. I didn't see him get his feathers ruffled to know what he's got there in that particular fight to know. That's all I'm saying. I'm certainly, not wanting to be harsh on him because I dislike him. I'm, so excited to see him in the division. I think it's going to be really good, especially that he's big at the weight. It'd be interesting to see how other people deal with him. But likewise, I'm kind of curious to see a little bit more of him to know whether I'm convinced that he can be a real contender in that division just yet.
Indeed. And all you can do is, that's what we do, is give
you watch and wait.
honest assessment. And isn't it? I do like it, as tough as it is for these fighters to weight cut and to get down to certain weights. I do like seeing some of these guys when they're in there, they go down in a weight and they're massive, because it gives the other fighters something different to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he certainly is bringing something to that division, and that fight to me still puts some questions about how he's going to do down there. Just need to see more of him, really.
Yeah. So next is the main event of the evening.
Yes.
Number 3 ranked Curtis Blades versus number 4 ranked Junior Dos Santos.
Yeah, we know Dos Santos obviously has really good hands. He really bangs. We know he's going to look to plant those hands on Curtis. But Curtis looks really good in his striking form. Very, very tight hands, really well positioned, head really well positioned. He actually looked like the one stalking for the potential strike. I know that he will initially always want to get it to the ground, but was looking so good in his form. And once he started throwing some punches and kicks, he actually has Dos Santos on the run, not just from the takedown, but from the punches and kicks. Dos Santos just looked like he just couldn't get anything off. He just couldn't get going in the fight. Whether there's an underlying issue or whether it's just the fact that Curtis just was performing so well and didn't give Dos Santos any opportunity. But yeah, it seems like Curtis was the one preying on Santos. You would think Santos being the guy that's got some of those knockouts on his record, it would have been the other way around.
Yeah, Blades, he was impressive. He came forward from the start. He was hunting, whether it was for takedowns or
I think
strikes.
he wanted to takedown. I don't think he even anticipated being so effective with his striking. But a good striker needs to be standing his ground or going forward to be super effective. It's very, very hard to be effective, backing up all the time.
Yeah.
You have to stop and trade at some point or press forward to trade. Dos Santos looked like he was getting intimidated. And it wasn't a good night for him, was it?
No, it was not. He got in the first round, Blades accidentally hit him low. The fight's halted, temporarily. But I mean, as soon as they resumed,
I think it was an uppercut as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was an uppercut. I mean, how he did an uppercut that low, I don't know, especially being it was in a clinch scenario.
Yeah. It was funny though, because once they resumed, they resumed and then they just started swinging. Straight at each other. Blades cracked him with a really nice straight right.
Yes, he did.
And backed him up. Landed a couple of rights, nailed him with a body kick, followed by another right. And he nailed a swinging Dos Santos. So like as they were swinging, as Blades was hitting him with the rights, Dos Santos has kind of come out swinging as well to counter with the right, and the round ends, and I think that woke up Dos Santos a little bit, and I thought, I kind of thought if that round had carried on, I would have liked to have seen whether Dos Santos could have turned it around. But the break almost interrupted because I don't know whether one of the shots just caught him and hurt him.
Was he? Didn't he do like a back fist or like a hammer fist? Didn't he try to break free off the fence? Yes, he got woken up a little bit there, but to me it was almost like a panic response, and I think it's because of the really good poised form that Blades had. He had his head in the right position, his hands were in the right position, he was pressing forward. It looked like not only could he be shooting for the takedown, which we know that he was initially going to be hunting for. I mean, he was hiding no secrets in interviews to say that he is going to take him down, but was struggling for that. But it turns out that struggle for the takedown was not even needed because it looked like he was performing as the better striker. I hope that's given him confidence to maybe trade a little bit on the feet with some other people who are classed as good strikers, because I think if he does so, it'll open up those opportunities for a takedown, to get someone in the mindset of striking and then shooting not be so obvious for that takedown. Because at first it was just too obvious, and Santos was he was shrugging them off and working out of those clinches quite easily. But I think he's developing to a all right little striker.
Yeah, he's a big boy, isn't he? And it's interesting, like you say, because Blades more known probably for his takedowns, and he was looking for that early on. But the damage he did with the strikes. It's but when I said they were swinging and they were going at each other, you're right. Like, but the way I said it, it makes it sound like they were kind of wildly swinging. But I think a better description is what you said, where Blades was quite settled in his movements. He was, his body was quite
very
still.
Very strict to form.
Whereas Dos Santos, particularly towards the end of that first round, maybe did have that kind of panicky, more hectic swinging of the strikes. And I think
it makes me, when I look at fights like this, Dos Santos has been around for a long, long time, and Curtis is really on his way up. It looks like Santos has just stayed the same type of fighter all the time, but it looks like someone who perhaps no longer does it. I mean, I'm surmising here, but I've seen this happen with fighters over the years have trained with me. They go off the boil a little bit. They perhaps no longer, do proper pad sessions.
Okay.
They become the type of character they can't be told. So they just surround themselves with little yes men around them.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not saying for one stretch that could be what's happening, but I just suspect that something's up with his training, because his form was not great. His hands were kind of down. His footwork wasn't exactly awesome or impressive. He was doing nothing impressive, nothing different from what he would normally do, other than the fact that he had to stay away from Curtis from taking him down, so he had to backpedal a little bit. But the fact that his face was a little exposed, and he did those panic strikes. To me, there's something obviously I miss with his training. Maybe he's not getting his sparring in like he used to. Because there's another thing. Once you've reached big status, sometimes they're beyond doing sparring rounds.
Yeah.
Again, this is another issue that I've seen throughout the years with different fighters. They become bigger than the club in their own minds, and they start turning up to chat and do a little warm-up work, exercise on their own, and they don't participate in the class anymore. They don't participate in the sparring anymore. And I'm wondering whether something like that's happening, because I'm not seeing him evolve. This is not the climate, and especially in UFC, to stagnate your game. You need to always bring something new to the table. I drum this into my students all the time, and as a club as a whole. When you're not doing a fight camp, that's your time to grow new weapons, grow new counters, consolidate your defensive game more. Always be a different fighter every time you fight. So there's always something potential that can't have been pre-read. So when I said the fighter in, they're not just going to do what they've always been seen to do so that a fighter can prepare for them. They're throwing something out that they haven't seen before. Another takedown combination, a spinning elbow this time that we're going to drill into their game. And that comes through play for sparring and doing your pad work and drills and making it live. And coming up with ideas as a collective club and as a team. I think something's amiss with his training. I wasn't impressed by DeSantos. I think it was a lame performance, but not to take anything away from Curtis. He was absolutely impressive and faultless with his form. He's someone who's being taught and listening and advancing his game.
Yeah, I think it's all about evolving, isn't it? In whatever you do, but I think particularly in fighting and the way MMA is going, if you don't evolve, you're going to get left behind. And Junior Dos Santos now is 35, looks the same, or if not worse, than he did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And Curtis Blades looks like a young guy, like you say, who's listening to his coaches. Is picking up new bags of tricks on his way up there.
Yeah.
So whereas previously he's been reliant on those takedowns, today or yesterday he was all about them strikes.
Yeah, I'm going to have a little look. I'm going to try and. I don't know who's been doing his striking, but I'm going to see whether I can find out who's been doing his striking, because it's not that he did anything super amazing, but the fact that he had really good tight form, that really impressed me. And that goes to show if he carries on with whatever striking coaches, putting his game together at the minute, you're going to see him become a striker as well as a wrestler. You're definitely seeing this kid evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saw that Michael Chiesa from the co-main event called out Kobe
yes.
Colby
We
Covington.
forgot to mention. Yes, he did.
I think that could be a good test for him.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know how bad Colby is with his jaw. I mean, how long is he going to be out for?
Didn't he break his jaw, or he had a fractured jaw or something like that?
Yeah. So that's going to take some while. So I don't know, calling on that fight, he might be waiting a little while. He perhaps best get a fight in between and wait to find out. Don't know how long it's going to be for him.
Well, like we said last week, you want to see fighters particularly when they pick up a win, is get back in as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's right.
Get some momentum rather than kind of waiting another year to fight. Or
I mean, I'm guessing he called out Colby because it's a money fight. It will attract money.
Yeah, of course.
And that's probably why he called him out. It was a financial move more than it was anything else, rather than a career move. Yeah, that's my guess on why he's called him out.
I just had a quick look to see if I could find out who Curtis Blades' striking coach was, but I can't seem to find it at the moment. But I'll have a quick look.
Yeah, something that I'm going to delve into and see if I can find, because I'm kind of curious. I was quite impressed.
Yes, indeed. So just to finish off the show, we got two questions because we've got another one sent in just while we've been talking, but nothing too technical today. So the first question is, does Brett John's up and down results since coming to the UFC showed what a step up it is after he was so dominant in Cage Warriors, or is it just that he has fought some real top names rather than lower ranked fighters to collect wins?
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt this kid's world class through and through. I don't think we've even seen the best of him yet. I still think skill-wise and experience-wise, he's on the up. He had a pretty much faultless career previous to those two losses. And, okay, so he's had two losses, but of the highest order. And they were never bad performances. So, yes, he had the two losses. He's back to winning ways again. I can't even say that it was an up-and-down career. He's had a blip that many people will have in their careers. Yeah, he had the two losses, but he's retracted back from that now. I think he's a real contender to make waves in that division. I just think we're going to see more of him and more good things from him.
Yeah, I agree. I really do. I think, some fighters can come in, particularly when they come into the UFC or to Bellator, if they've got a bit of a reputation from, wherever they've come from, whether it's Invicta or Cage Warriors or whatever, they can kind of take, I don't want to say easy fights because I don't believe there's any such thing as easy fights, but they take comfortable fights to collect wins, as it were. And if you look at the opponents that Brett Johns has faced in the UFC, they are, they are top draw fighters, top 10 fighters. So I think, and I think, I can't remember if we mentioned this earlier in the show or if I mentioned it to you off the air, but the fights that he had with these fighters, yes, he lost, but he actually, didn't disgrace himself, did very well in those fights. And you could see the emotion on his face, actually. When it was over, you could see how much, how much he'd put into the training camp and ability-wise, he's got it.
Yeah, it's UFC. It's such the ultimate step up, isn't it? It's where most fighters or all fighters will want to get to, and it's probably been a dream for his. It's going to feel different. There's traveling aspects to be taken. There's probably a lot of new experiences he had to have. A new promotion, traveling. That traveling changes a little bit regards to how your body holds water. There's so many factors that can make it feel a little different from how it normally felt. Whether those were issues enough, along with the fact that he was fighting top 10, we can only guess at. But I think there was no disgrace in those two losses that he had. There was nothing that was showing up that he had a major issue in his game. I just think he fought two really tough opponents. So, maybe the experience was a little bit too much for him. But I think he's back on winning ways. I think that's going to stay the case. And I think you're going to see him being a contender in that division in coming years.
Absolutely. I mean, Brett Johns beat Albert Morales. He beat Joe Soto in the finale of Tough Enough. And then he lost to Pedro Munez and Aljamain Sterling. Yeah. So, straight away, you can see they're tough fights. They are. And,
absolutely.
He beat Albert Morales, and I think hopefully he's back on the winning
he's
trail.
Back on the up. Yes. Yeah.
And the final question sent in by Gaz is, where did the name BST come from, and who named it?
Okay, so the history behind BST is we call ourselves BST Academy now, but the actual original name BST stood for Blood, Sweat and Tears. Okay. That was come up with a guy, I can't remember his surname, but his name was Sid. He was someone that I trained with in jiu-jitsu. As far as I'm aware, he's gone into managing fighters and that now. He was always someone that had his fingers in lots of pies. He did actually ask me to coach for him when he started up BST. I'm talking a good number of years ago now. And it ran for a number of years, and I got a phone call for him saying that they were struggling producing an actual MMA fight team. They had jiu-jitsu there. Would I come along and help out? He'd pay me for it. to help produce a fight team and try and put what we're doing wrong and try and put them right, because I was having a successful fight team with Total Dojo, as it was at the time, which is still running, by the way, in Milton Keynes, Bletchley. Still a great gym to go to. They just don't do MMA anymore. They do BJJ there and street self-defense, kickboxing, really good for kids as well. So if anyone's in that area that's interested, go to Total Dojo. But getting back onto point, I just chose not to at that time, because I knew what a loose cannon he was, and I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket with him and coach for him full time by any stretch. So I just did a few nights a week. That's how it started out. But then, not long after I did that, I got a phone call off of a friend who's training partner at BST, Blood, Sweat and Tears, saying, "Oh, it shut down. Sid's shut it down." I'm like, "Oh my God!" I was just shocked, because I'd been coaching there just for a couple of months, and with all this hope and prospect of creating a new fight team, then it was all shut. And a guy called Greg Lund, I found out, had bought him out and moved it right into the heart of town. Okay. I got a phone call from him explaining that he had bought Sid out, and that my name kept cropping up as a coach to have, and that's how my relationship with Greg started. I started just coaching for him at one point. Then I started coaching more and more, and then I gave up Total Dojo, I gave up Immortal, I gave up Rough and Ready, so I was coaching all around different places. And then he changed it to BST Northampton, as it was then eventually to BST Academy, as we started to do more for the town of Northampton. We wanted to be a martial art academy that helps youngsters get off the street. We wanted to put on free self-defense classes for women, because women were being attacked. We had a really sad murder. So we introduced free female self-defense classes. But it's a bit of a long answer.
No, that's good. It started
really
out as
Blood, Sweat and Tears. Now we've moved away from it being called Blood, Sweat and Tears, and we just call it BST Academy. And although a lot of people see it as a fight gym, it is ultimately an academy to help these young kids who perhaps couldn't afford to train or can't afford their equipment. We can subsidise and help them with their dietary aspects, and help launch careers, and also help girls who don't want a fight career, who just want to become confident on the street. We do that. We do kids classes for kids that are in trouble, and get kicked out of schools. We're the ones that don't turn their back on them, and we still help them. So it's totally changed from what BST was originally when it was under Sid. Now it's under Greg. It's really become an academy for Northampton.
That's wicked. I tell you what, I'm really glad that Gaz, was it?
It's a very good question, actually. Very, very good question.
Because I find that, that's really interesting. And I think, obviously, like we've talked about, like you're, working with, fighters like Tom and Jordan and Modestus and people like this.
Yeah.
But obviously there's another side to it as well. It's not just the professional guys and the Cage Warriors guys and the UFC guys now. It's also the trying to help local people and
absolutely.
Kids
there's a lot that goes on in the gym that really heartwarming. We've got a guy who's a paratrooper, lost a leg, he lost part of the movement in his arm. He trains boxing under our coach Lee Edwards, and he does a lot of charity bouts. So we do a lot with the damaged victims of war. There's a real lot that goes on there, and it's all stuff that's done for really good causes. We even did one time, we had one of our training buddies unfortunately commit suicide, and so we did a charity role where we rolled for 24 hours throughout the whole night.
Wow.
Great. And we did it all in the name of our friend. A really good cause again. So that's really the grounds of what our club is all about. But we get known as being a fight gym, which is certainly a big and important part of our club. Also, it's the bit that flies the flag for our club, I suppose you would say. Yeah,
of course. I think I got to say, I find that really interesting, and it's the sort of thing that we need more of in terms of, just for not just for MMA, but for women, for children, for different aspects of life, and people being able to defend themselves, discipline, all different aspects of it.
And what perhaps a lot of people don't realise, but we're all really close regards all the coaches. Me, Lee Edwards, JB Graham, K1 Thai boxing coach, Alex, our wrestling coach. We're all really, really close knit, and a lot of the sessions we have, you'll be surprised how many times students come with different other problems. It turns out we're not just coaches for the arts that we teach. We end up being life coaches as well, quite often, and never meant to be that way. We do find it is that way, and whether it's just coincidence, we are people that feel like we do have compassion for people, not just for our arts, and we consequently help people in their just general lives. That's what we find we end up doing.
Well, the thing is that shows that they trust you, which again shows the tight knit aspect of it, and it's like a kind of family. Like you're all part of a family, family atmosphere, which I like a team, and I really like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Any success that we have as in terms of our MMA is really not just down to me. I cover the MMA aspect of it, gelling together all the styles that we do have within our club. But there's JB Graham does wonderful stuff, particularly with Jordan. Lee Edwards works up a lot with this guy called Nick Hayes, who's an amateur at the minute, but trust me, he's going to come on the scene and make waves as a pro. We really are a club of collective coaches that just work really, really well together. We just fire on all cylinders at all time. Sort of Lee Edwards has sort of become the daddy of the group. He's the older one of the group that sort of keeps us lot all in line. I'm sort of the MMA strategy mind behind it all. JB Graham's the one that we respect because of his knowledge for the whole striking system. And Alex, he's just an incredible wrestler that's just got so much passion. When people have one-to-ones, which I advise them to have them with this guy, they'll pay for an hour. He'll be on the mat with you for an hour and 45 minutes just because he's so excited that you're taking interest in his passion of wrestling, and he's willing to adapt it for the MMA too. So he asks me questions about the MMA to try to make wrestling fit better. So as a collective, we really are still evolving together as a relationship, not just as friends, but as coaches alongside each other to produce the best MMA team we can.
Absolutely, it's so cool. I really thank you for sharing all that. It's real cool.
And so
guys,
but you've got to promise me you're going to come down and have a look at our gym.
Yeah, I will. I want to. I obviously.
We'll look after you there. We'll go out for some food. It'd be nice to meet you in person.
Yeah, definely.
Yeah, maybe I should have asked you that off air, but I'm going to ask you on air to make sure you do it.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I'm going to do a little tour of England. I think I got to Middlesbrough to see Andy, and I'll go up to Northampton to see you guys.
Yeah. Maybe you can do it as an attachment to your podcast. I don't know if that's possible to do. Do one where you're actually at our gym. Yeah, it'd be great to show your facilities. I've spoke about you a lot in terms of our gym, and you get your name's being bantered about a lot anyway. I know Jordan's interested in getting in contact. I think he's been in contact maybe.
Yeah, I think I spoke to Jordan, and
really good, as well, super nice guy, and I'm sure you're going to have a real good podcast with him. But all these guys know of you, and they would love to meet you in person. I think it'll just consolidate all that we do here on the podcast and make it even more natural.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll be up for doing that. I have to work out how long it takes to get from Cardiff to Northampton, but I don't think it's not too bad. But well, I looking to do that. I think this year certainly is maybe do one of these in person up your way, and I'm going to try and do one with Andy in person up in Middlesbrough as well.
You'll be well received. You won't have to worry about if you want to stay overnight. I can sort all that out. But yeah, you've been asked on air. So you've got to do it this year now.
Got to do it now, haven't I? Guys, check out www.bstacademy.co.uk for more information about Danny's the academy and the work they do and everything that is available through them. Today's show was brought to you by Away Day Apparel. Away Day Apparel is a group of casually obsessed football fans looking to bring something different to the wardrobes of like-minded people. Please visit their website, awaydayapparel.co.uk. I'll put the links in the description as well, and I highly recommend give them a follow on Twitter @awaydayapparel and Instagram @awayday_apparel. 2020 is going to be a very interesting and exciting year for the brand. And as a special treat for listeners and viewers to Ace Podcast Nation, if you use the code AA Podcast Nation, you get 10% off all orders. It's all. Make sure you do the code all in lowercase, and that's AA Podcast Nation. Follow me, facebook.com/AceCastNation, Twitter @AceCast_Nation. Most of all, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I really, really, really appreciate it. The best way to support us as a channel and as a show, with the Danny Batten Show and all the other different series we do, is to subscribe on YouTube. The magic number is 1,000 subscribers on YouTube to be able to really push it to the next level. We're currently on 599, I believe, so we're kind of halfway there. But if you wouldn't mind dropping us a subscription on there, if you click the bell, then you'll get a notification every time we go live or we upload a new show. Danny, thank you for joining me again.
Pleasure, Si.
It's always a good time. I think we're got a weekend off next week,
right?
And then the following week we've got John Jones fighting February the 8th.
Oh, yes,
could be an interesting card, that one.
Absolutely.
And then there's a good women's fight on there as well. With I think it's Valentina Shevchenko.
All right, yeah.
And Derek Lewis is fighting as well. And we've also got some other ones coming up. We've obviously got the UFC London card. We've got the Bellator Ireland cards. There's lots and lots of good fights. Khabib versus Tony Ferguson in April.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Adesanya versus Romero in March. Woof. Lots of good stuff. Guys,
is.
If you prefer us doing kind of some of the smaller shows as well, then hit me up, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or private message and tell us. Or if you just rather stick to the big pay-per-views, then let us know what you prefer. But yeah, Danny, thanks for joining me, mate.
Yeah, thank you, Si. Another good weekend. Good chat.
And we'll speak to you soon, guys. Thanks for watching, listening, however you do, and we'll see you next time.